Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Michael Schroeder, and thank you for tuning into this podcast today. We really appreciate it here at GSMC. We're going to talk about a lot of different things within the NBA. We're going to talk about the New York Knicks, how they keep on their winning ways. We're going to talk about LeBron James and his recent complaints about the play-in tournament that I found a little bit unfair. And we're going to go into that. We're going to talk about Devin Booker winning Western Conference Player of the Week and why people need to start paying more attention to him. And then I'm going to explain the Julius Randle story about why he deserves to be most improved player in the NBA this season. To start off this podcast, we're going to break down the New York Knicks. All right, they got back to the fact that they've won 3 straight games. Okay, and the thing about the Knicks is that they have won 12 out of their last 13. I'll repeat that again for you guys. Won 12 out of their last 13 games. Okay? So it's not like, this 3-game winning streak is a fluke. Okay? The last month of the season, they've been playing absolute incredible basketball. They've been doing it through continuity on offense, through tough coaching in Tom Thibodeau, through great defense. And they have a star talented player in Julius Randle, right? Who I'm going to talk about him later on in the show. But this is the thing about the Knicks. They have really got it done. And they're beating quality teams while doing it. And I think, look, I'm a huge Knicks fan, obviously, right? I've talked about them a bunch on this podcast. I'm a big Knicks fan, and they haven't had a winning record in over 8 years. Well, correction, about 8 years. The last time they had a winning record was 2012 through the 13th season. And that was the last time they made the playoffs. And this win they had against Memphis a couple nights ago results in them having their first over 500 projected winning finish, a record finish, since 2013. They're 37-28 at the moment. And again, it's not a surprise to me that they've done this well. Not a surprise. Because the one thing about them is they've started now to win on the road, which has been a big weakness of theirs this season. What I mean by that is the fact that they're 15-17 on the road, and they've won 2 straight. They were 13-17 entering this long road stretch they're on, right? They went to Houston, won that. Then they went to Memphis. Then they play the Nuggets tonight, and then they play the Clippers, the Lakers, and the Suns. And then they come back home and play the Spurs, the Celtics, and I believe one other team at the end of the year. But this road stretch has shown me a lot about the Knicks. But the thing is, the Knicks are doing what they've done all season long, which is beat you through their style. They're not conforming to the high-octane offense where guys come down, dribble, jack up threes, and, the flashy, cool-looking offensive plays. No, they're not really conforming to that, which is one reason why I think a lot of people should give them more respect. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the Knicks have shown that they can play their style and win. Are they officially back? I think this season they've proven that they are back in the sense of being a legitimate playoff team. But in terms of being a contender, they're not quite there yet, obviously, right? Because I think they're a first-round winning series type of team. They're going to lose in the second round, right? That's kind of how I feel about the Knicks at this moment in time. But we're going to look at the fact that the last 3 games they've won, they beat the Bulls, who had Nikola Vucevic. I know they didn't have Zach LaVine when they played against him, but they beat them. Then they destroyed the Rockets, and the Rockets, as people probably forgot, even though Giannis didn't play in that game, Kevin Porter Jr. scored 50 on Drew Holiday and the Bucks lost to the Rockets the other day. So the Rockets are not very good, but they have the capability of surprising a lot of teams. And then they just beat Memphis. Memphis, who's going to be fighting for playoff position. They were the 8th seed when the Knicks played them the other night. And with that win, they pushed Memphis to the 9th spot. But still, those are quality wins. And look, they've beaten the Hawks. They've beaten the Celtics this year. And they've beaten the Mavericks. Right? Like, they've beaten legit teams. They've been able to fight and claw their way to get to that 4th spot. They deserve it. And the fact is, it's not just the fact of one guy doing everything all the time, right? Julius Randle's been playing unreal basketball. He had 28 points in the recent game against Memphis. I get that, right? People are going to look at that and say, oh, Julius Randle's the only reason this team is winning. All right, well, that's not fair, because you're undermining the guys who are stepping up in the service also of the Knicks, right? And it's not just Julius Randle, because he's playing unbelievable basketball. Obviously, he had 31 against the Rockets. He had over 25 against the Bulls. He had 28 against the Memphis Grizzlies. But you have RJ Barrett, who had 15 against the Grizzlies, right? And the Grizzlies are a good defensive team. He's had multiple games where he's had 20 points this year. And the reason why is because RJ Barrett has started to understand the game better. His jump shot's gotten a lot better. He's shooting 38% from 3 this year. And what that's allowed his game to do is it's opened up his driving game, which he's also gotten a lot better at. Absorbing the physicality and using his size and his strength now to finish through defenders and make shots, right? But the thing is, the Knicks are again, they didn't even have Nerlens Noel in their last game, who's their leading shot blocker, but it didn't matter because they have guys who step up. You know, Alex Burks returned to the lineup. He had 9 points on 4 of 7 shooting. You look at Taj Gibson, right? Taj Gibson doesn't always score a whole lot of points, but he's great defensively. He's great on the glass, and he's a guy that can at least hit like a 15-foot jump shot very consistently. He's a guy that can finish around the rim, and he's a guy who's also a veteran, right? He's been there before. He's been through multiple playoff battles, and he's a tough guy that has played for Thibodeau, who understands how Thibodeau coaches. And that's resulted in actually the Knicks not even losing a beat when they lose a guy like Nerlens Noel, who's a better shot blocker. Because Taj Gibson plays defense. He's tough. He'll rebound with the best of them if he gets the full amount of minutes. He's a guy that's experienced in trying to win games and trying to play good defense every night. And that's important because what the Knicks' identity is based on defense, right? Being more physical than you, being tougher, getting the pace to where they want it, right? They're not like the Washington Wizards who score 150 points but will allow 140. And nothing against the Washington Wizards because they've played excellent basketball as of late. But Washington wins the games basically by just outscoring other teams. It's how Brooklyn kind of plays, to be honest with you. And that's why I think the Knicks are obviously a better team than Washington, even though I think Washington, you can argue, has better star talent in terms of their stars with Westbrook and Bradley Beal over the Knicks. The Knicks basically starting lineup is Elfrid Payton, RJ Barrett, Reggie Bullock, Julius Randle, and Nerlens Noel. I mean, that starting lineup, if you gave me that starting lineup, you would never expect that team to be 4th in the East. But you know why they are is because they bought into Thibodeau's system, right? They haven't sat around and gotten worse. They actually, figured out, okay, Thibodeau's going to hold us accountable on the defensive end. So what we're going to do is make sure that we lock into that, right? We're going to lock in defensively. And it's worked out, right? And just to give you some key numbers, and I understand they're not against great teams, but just to give you an idea, right, of how good their defense has been, we're gonna show you exactly what the Knicks have done, right? So the Knicks held the Chicago Bulls to 94 points the other night. 94 points, okay? The Bulls as a team score 111 points a game. 110.6 to be exact, okay? That's how many points they average on the year, okay? So let's look at, so that's the Bulls, right? And they were held to 94 points, right? As everyone knows, I've relayed this before, the Knicks are number 1 in the NBA when it comes to opponents' points per game, okay? So now we're going to look at the Houston Rockets, right? The Houston Rockets average 107.7 points a game. They were held to 97 in that loss to the Knicks, right? And the thing is, you look at the lineup that at least Houston's been putting together. Christian Wood, 21 points a game. Kelly Olynyk, 18.2 points a game since he's been there, right? Kevin Porter, 16.6. Jayshawn Tate, 11.2. You can look at like Kenyon Martin, 7.5. Daniel House, David Nwaba, right? I understand these guys aren't that talented of players, but again, like that's a decent scoring lineup, and they were held to 97 points. And then you look at the Grizzlies, right? The Grizzlies aren't necessarily a great offensive team, but they've gotten better this season under Taylor Jenkins. And I'm looking at their points per game, and look, they do score a decent amount of points, 113 points a game. That's pretty good, right? They're held to 104 against the Knicks. So what is that telling me, right? The Knicks are winning it by doing it their way. They're not taking no for an answer. They're not sitting there and not learning from their mistakes. They're playing their slow-paced style. They're playing great defense. They're getting out in transition from their defense. And again, they don't play like as slow a pace like a team like the Lakers does, right? They play at a normal pace, but their defense is so good that they really shut down teams. To give you guys an understanding of just how good their defense has been the last couple of games, right? Ja Morant, to give you guys an understanding about that, Ja Morant averages 19 points a game, right? 19 points a game. And when the Knicks played him the other night, Ja Morant was 2 of 13 from the floor and had 8 points, and he was ejected, right, because of his frustration. And people are going to sit there and say, oh, well, that's one game. Well, again, that's not just a whole continuation effect. I mean, the one thing I'll say is the Knicks have done this against other guys too, right? They've really made things tough. I mean, Jonas Valanciunas, who's a good offensive player, only had 11 points. I mean, you look at the Houston Rockets. I mean, Christian Wood shot less than 45% against the Knicks in that loss, and he didn't have 20 points. So the point is that the Knicks are playing real defense, right? They're number one in basically most of the defensive statistic categories, which is points allowed, 3-point shooting percentage, and field goal percentage. And what that does is that when you get in the postseason, and the reason I always talk about the Knicks defense is because when you get in the postseason, you got to be able to, when the game slows down, to at least get a stop and get a bucket. So the Knicks have always been able to get a stop. But the big thing now is they're now able to get buckets too, because they have a couple guys that can close at the end of games. Right, getting Alec Burks back, he's a guy that at least you can give the ball to at the end of the game, and he can make threes. He made a big three in a loss at Brooklyn. He's made a couple other key plays down the stretch. But the guy I want to bring up who's been playing exceptional basketball recently for the New York Knicks is Derrick Rose. And the reason why is because I'm looking at Derrick Rose, and if you look at the Memphis game, right, the Memphis game is a good tell because people are going to say, oh, what do you mean? Memphis is not that great. Well, Memphis is a team that's in playoff position at the moment, right? They were entering that Knicks game. They're the 8th seed in the entire Western Conference. And what that means is that you're playing against a team that's, and especially in the Western Conference, that is legit, right? They're a legit team. However, you look at Derrick Rose, he had 25 points against the Memphis Grizzlies. And he was 11 of 15 from the floor, 3 of 5 from 3. And what he did in the late game, he made 3 key buckets to basically pull the Knicks ahead and out of reach for Memphis to stage any sort of comeback. And the reason is because Derrick Rose is much more skilled than he was when he was younger, right? And actually what's funny is that Memphis game was the 10-year anniversary of when he won his first MVP, which is pretty cool. But anyway, what he's to be able to do is he has exceptional ball handling skills. He can shoot the three much better, but also his change of speed and change of pace has really allowed him to be really effective with his float game around the basket and finishing around taller defenders. And the thing is, when he gets guys like Valanciunas or a slower-footed big in pick-and-roll situations, it results actually in the Knicks being able to do beneficial stuff in the offensive end because they have a guy that at least can take over down the stretch if Julius Randle's getting double teams, which happens a lot, right? You can't just rely on one guy to win the game for you all the time, right? This is what I think a lot of people don't understand. just because guys like LeBron James are the closer at the end of the game, sometimes that option's not going to be open. You got to have another guy that you can trust. And I wouldn't say RJ Barrett, even though he's had his moments, I don't think I would trust him as much as I trust Derrick Rose at this point in time. Because Derrick Rose has experience. Derrick Rose has been clutch in many moments before. I mean, just look at his 2011 run. Look at when he put the Bulls up 2-1 over the Cavs in the 2015 playoffs with that buzzer beater. Again, look at last night. Look at other games too. I mean, you can look at the Hawks game. You can look at the Bulls when he took over that game too. You need good play from your bench, right? They have guys like Emmanuel Quickley and Alec Burks who can, explode at any time. But having a consistent piece in Derrick Rose who can give you 15 to 20 points off the bench is a reason why the Knicks can be in good position to win an NBA championship. And that's incredibly important, right? Again, he had 24 in their win against the Rockets. And this is not just the fact that I'm like looking at Derrick Rose and I'm saying, I'm a Knicks fan, so I have to support my players. No, that's not it at all. It's not it at all. And again, he's averaging 14.3 points a game, which is solid off the bench. He's shooting 47.7% from the floor, 40% from three, and 86% from the line, with 4.1 assists and 4.1 rebounds. 2.7 rebounds and 4.1 assists. My apologies there. So the thing is, I look at what he's done for the Knicks this season in 29 games, and you look at the Knicks, right? The Knicks right now, their pace is the worst in the league, and there's a reason why, right? Because they don't play, through a fast-paced style, right? They have the 4th defensive rating in the league. They have the 18th ranked offense. I mean, again, they're not looking at themselves as a team that basically, wants to play fast and play with high level pace. They want to grind you out and use it through their physicality. And the thing is, they got a big game, obviously, against the Nuggets. And the Nuggets just came off a tough loss to the Lakers. The Lakers beat them 93-89, despite the fact that Jokic had 32 and Michael Porter Jr. had 18 points. And Jokic shot 12 of 28 from the floor, so it wasn't like he was super efficient. When usually he pretty much is. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that the Knicks should watch what Marc Gasol did from a defensive standpoint on Nikola Jokic. You're not going to stop Nikola Jokic. You're not going to make him score 10 points. But if you can make him shoot inefficiently and not allow him to get the other guys involved as much, you're in a good position. If you make him score and the rest of the team doesn't really score a whole ton because he's not dishing the ball that much, you're in good shape. Because where he's effective is he gives you like 25 points, 12 rebounds, 13 assists. It's like similar to guarding LeBron, right? You have to pick your poison. But I think also the Knicks have bodies to throw at a guy like Jokic. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you look at if Nerlens Noel is healthy, right? That's a shot blocker that is effective at disrupting opposing centers and making things really difficult for them. He's good at understanding how to fight over the top in post position, making it not easy for Jokic to get the ball, right? You also have Taj Gibson, a guy who did a very good job on Jonas Valanciunas, who's a pretty good post center the other night. And then also, the thing is, you're not going to slow Jokic. You're not going to stop Jokic. You can slow him down, but you can't stop him. Because Jokic right now is the MVP of the league. And what the Knicks need to do is just throw multiple bodies at him, be physical with him, make him take tough shots. He's going to make a lot of them, but it's okay. And then basically contain the other guys. Julius Randle has to win that matchup with Michael Porter Jr. And with Aaron Gordon's guarding him, he has to dominate Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon is obviously a very tough matchup because he's a very good defender. He's very long. He's very athletic. He's very physical. But if Julius Randle can win the matchup between him and Michael Porter Jr., the Knicks are in good shape. But also the guards for the Knicks got to take over those games too. The Nuggets don't have Jamal Murray or Will Barton. So if you're Elfrid Payton or if you're Emmanuel Quickley, if you're Derrick Rose, you can't, when Campazzo, for example, is the guy guarding you, you can't lose that matchup. You can't lose it, right? So the Knicks are consistent defensively if they win their individual matchups, because I think Julius Randle is going to be in the toughest situation because he's going to be guarded by the best defender on the Nuggets and Aaron Gordon, right? But if he can contain Michael Porter Jr., understand that Michael Porter Jr. is going to look for a lot of jump shots, not saying he won't drive to the rim, but he's going to look for a lot of jump shots or backdoor passes from Jokic, they're going to be in good shape. If they're able to be physical with Jokic, make him make difficult shots and everything like that and turn the ball over him a lot, they're in good shape. And if the guards in Emmanuel Quickley, Derrick Rose, Alfred Payton, RJ Barrett can win those matchups, they're in good shape too. And if Reggie Bullock, who I forgot to mention, who had 13 points against the Memphis Grizzlies, if he can continue hitting threes like he's been hitting them the last month of the season, the Knicks can totally beat the Nuggets because the Nuggets aren't at full strength. Even though the Nuggets have been playing really well without Jamal Murray, they're 9-2 without him in the lineup. The thing is, the Knicks have won 12 out of 13 and have been playing one of the best in terms of hot streaks in basketball right now. So I look at the Knicks. I think they got a great shot to win this game and a great shot to knock off a team that a lot of people are definitely going to favor over the Knicks because I think the Knicks have a formula to win, right? Their offense has gotten better week by week. They do play at the slowest pace, which is fine. And the thing is, they play excellent defense. So the thing is, they're going to be in a lot of games because they play excellent defense. Now, they got to make things difficult for Jokic, and they got to keep Michael Porter Jr. off the glass and make things difficult for him on catch and shoot and pull up opportunities. And also the guards have to win that matchup, right? So I look at the Knicks. They keep on winning, and they keep on producing. So nothing to be complained about, and they just got to continue to keep to their formula, and I think they're going to be in good shape once the playoffs roll around, and even on this road stretch as well. We're going to take a quick commercial break here, and I will be back to talk about other segments shortly.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm Michael Shredder, your host for this podcast. If you missed my last segment, please check it out. It's about the New York Knicks, who I'm obviously a big fan of. I've talked about them many times in the show. Talk about how they kept up their winning ways, how they can beat Denver. It's a very interesting segment, and I encourage you guys to check it out. Later on the show, I'm going to be breaking down Devin Booker as he won the Western Conference Player of the Week again. And then I'm also going to talk about why Julius Randle should be the most improved player in the NBA, and also his entire story to get to the point where he's got now. But before I break down any of that, we're going to talk about the best player in the NBA, and that's LeBron James. We're going to talk about his recent comments about the play-in tournament. So as you guys who have maybe listened to my podcast on this platform before, I told you how I thought the idea of it at first, the play-in, was not a very smart idea. Because I thought it didn't really value the teams that fought to get that 7th or 8th spot. And the thing is, I never liked the idea because I just think that allowing a team that has a losing record to fight for a play-in spot, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like if the Washington Wizards, for example, don't have a very good record. Well, I understand what the NBA is now trying to do with it is to prioritize winning and devalue the idea of tanking to get a good draft pick. I get that, but I was never a fan of it at first. However, I did also acknowledge that since the format has been made, the players just got to kind of buckle up and get the train rolling for their team. They just got to win the games, right? Avoid the play-in as much as possible. Win the games you're supposed to win and then beat teams that maybe you're not supposed to win, right? Get the job done. If you're an elite-level superstar, you should be getting the job done. So the thing is, LeBron James came out after their recent loss to the Toronto Raptors, where he re-aggravated his ankle again, which caused him to miss their recent game against Denver. And what he basically said is that I'm going to paraphrase this, but he basically said that he thinks that whoever made the play-in tournament should be fired. And here's the thing about that, right? And people are probably going to say, okay, well, you're a guy who's against the play-in tournament from the start. Why would you not defend LeBron in this situation? And again, I defend the fact that the play-in should not have been allowed to happen in the first place. But this situation's different, right? The situation's different. Because he's only saying that is because the Lakers are still in trouble of being in that play-in spot. And that's the only reason he's saying it. Before they even started, he was actually in favor of it. So it looks a little hypocritical. And the thing is, when I look at LeBron James, right, he's such a great player. He's done a lot for the game. And he's a guy that I would trust in a lot of circumstances to win. And my thing is that while I understand that a lot of players are frustrated about the play-in tournament, because I am too, I think it was a terrible idea. With it being established, you got to go get the job done, right? Avoid it as best as possible. Win the games you're supposed to win, right? Don't lose to Toronto. Don't lose to Sacramento at home, right? I mean, those are games you shouldn't lose, right? But you did. Now, you beat Denver the other night where you looked more like the defensive team that you're supposed to be. But the thing is, I understand why now, from reading it more, why the NBA decided to do the play-in is because they wanted to prioritize winning. They want to say, okay, you want to earn a playoff spot, get a top 6 seed. With that being said, now the Lakers are the 5th spot because they beat the Nuggets the other night, right? And the thing is, I get it, right? In the sense that even though I'm not a big fan of it when it was first established, and still not really a big fan of it, and I understand why the players are upset about it. My thing is saying, LeBron, just get your team to the 5 spot, right? You're good enough. You can get the job done, right? Get healthy and get this train rolling the right direction, right? Because the problem is people don't like to hear stars complain. I certainly don't. People don't like to hear complaints, right? Especially because a guy like LeBron, who was in the Eastern Conference for 15 years and was given an easier playoff format by a lot of people's estimations, right? And it was true, right? The teams he played in the Eastern Conference compared to the Western Conference were generally weaker. It's not undermining how great LeBron is. He had to lead teams that were far weaker than other teams in the Eastern Conference to the finals. And he was never favored in any of those finals that he went to, at least with Cleveland, etc. But the thing is, people don't like to hear him complain because they're like, all right, LeBron, you're good enough. You should be able to get it done. Right? And the only reason you're complaining is because you're now losing games, right? And that argument does make a lot of sense because LeBron James is so good that he should be able to get the job done, right? Even if he's in a play-in situation, he should be able to get in the playoffs, right? He should have no fear about that. And he did explain that, but he said how the person should be fired. Again, that's an attack on the commissioner, right? The commissioner came up with the idea. Look, you cannot like it, but unfortunately, it's the reality of the situation is that you have it still in front of you. I'm not a fan of the play-in tournament, and I don't think it should be established next season, but it's there. So unfortunately, you got to be able to get the job done. And that's the point I'm making here. It's LeBron, when he was back, they were 0-2 when he came back, right? He did not look like himself. He didn't. He looked about 70% of what he actually is as a player. And that's bothersome, right? That's worrisome for a guy like me who I think if the Lakers are fully healthy, can definitely come out of the Western Conference, right? And I still think LeBron James is the best player in basketball. I do. I 100% believe that, right? I know Durant might be slightly a better scorer, but LeBron James has proven that you can't underestimate his teams and that he doesn't always need high-level superstars to win. Now, he is a big component of players vouching to get super teams. I get that, right? But the point is, people don't like to hear the stars complain, right? Especially guys like LeBron. LeBron's already highly scrutinized. This just doesn't look like a good look because it'd be one thing if they're okay, beginning of the year, we're not a fan of this play-in tournament, right? The reason I defended the players about it is because I'm I'm not a fan of it either. But unfortunately, the reality is you have it in front of you. So your complaints aren't going to do you any good because you just got to go get the job done and avoid that play-in. If you're the Lakers, get that 5 spot, right? All you have to do is get the 5 or 6 spot and you're out of that play-in tournament, right? Let Portland or Dallas deal with that play-in tournament. Don't let yourselves get in that situation, And it's time for the Lakers to kind of get it together, right? They beat Denver the other night. They just got to get together, right? They got to stop with the complaining and saying, like, oh, we're not there yet. We need to get our conditioning right. Start getting the job done, right? Because even though, and I'm going to repeat it again, I'm not a fan of the play-in tournament, right? I've said this on this show before. Not a fan of it, obviously. Because I think that the 7 and 8 spots is hard enough to get, right? That you don't need to play some play-in tournament in order to get it the opportunity. However, it's there, right? It's present in front of you. So you got to get the job done, right? Life is not always fair, unfortunately, right? I've heard that quote many times. Life's not fair, right? But the thing is that you just got to get the job done. Go get it done, right? And the thing is, the Lakers own the tiebreaker with the Portland Trailblazers at the moment. And I'm going to look at the Lakers' schedule to tell you legitimately how many games they need to win. And also, LeBron needs to get healthy, right? If LeBron's not healthy, this team is going to get demolished by the Clippers in the first round if they keep the 5 spot. Demolished. I think with LeBron, they still might lose that series. I'm not even sure if I pick the Lakers in that series if LeBron's not fully healthy. And I'm looking at the Lakers, right? So the Lakers in their next game play the Clippers on Thursday, and then they play the Trailblazers on Friday. Those are 2 humongous games for them. If they lose both of them, they're in that 7 spot most likely, right? If you're the Lakers, you have to win those games, especially if you see a team like the Clippers in the playoffs. Right now, you'd be slated to play against them if you're the Lakers, right? And Portland's a team that's right on your heels and the 7th spot, but basically are on a tiebreaker. But since you beat them this year, they're going to ultimately be behind you. But if you lose, then that's a different story. Different story. So the Lakers got a great chance in front of them, right? The Lakers play the Clippers, the Trailblazers, the Suns. So 3 of the top, 3 playoff teams, right? The Clippers, top 4 seed. Suns, top 2 seed. The Trailblazers, top 7 seed. Then they play the Lakers, who are 4th in the East. Then the Rockets, the Pacers, the Pelicans. That's not an easy stretch, right? Let's compare that to like the Portland Trailblazers, right? So the Portland Trailblazers just lost to the Hawks the other night, but they play the Cavaliers, they play the Lakers, they play the Spurs, the Rockets, the Jazz, the Suns, and the Nuggets. So they don't have an easy stretch either, right? They don't have an easy stretch. And then we're going to look at the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks play the Heat, today, and then they play the Nets, the Cavs, the Grizzlies. So they play the Cavs twice, the Grizzlies, the Pelicans, the Raptors, and the Timberwolves. They have a generally pretty easy stretch to end the year. But again, people are not, if the Lakers somehow make the play-in, the 7th spot, and they have to battle out, no one's going to feel sorry for them, unfortunately, right? It's what, unfortunately, LeBron's greatness has resulted in, right? People don't want to hear him complain, right? Go get the job done, in a sense, right? And the thing is, it's different for saying, I was against the play-in from the start versus what the reality is now, and then you start complaining about it now, right? And that just looks a bit like sour grapes and being like a sore loser, unfortunately, from other people's outside looking in. I'm not necessarily saying it's that, but that's how people look at it, right? Especially because people are already looking to criticize LeBron James because he's a great player. People are saying, well, why are you complaining? You're great. You should be able to get it done. And I'm actually in that camp. I do say, you're great enough. This is the reality that the play-in is happening. Just go get these wins and get the job done, right? You have a very difficult stretch coming up. You have a very difficult stretch to end the season, right? Get yourself healthy, get the team ready to go, and win these games that you're supposed to win, right? And they're not necessarily technically supposed to win these games, but if LeBron James is on any team, they're supposed to be in the championship. They're supposed to win it. And even if that's not fair, it's how the reality has been set, right? Jordan was in the same way, right? If Jordan's Bulls teams were healthy, ready to go, and Jordan was there, people were like, Bulls should win the NBA championship. Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, same situation, right? When Hakeem Olajuwon won those 2 NBA championships, people were like, oh, yeah, Hakeem Olajuwon, you got a great chance to win the NBA championship. Shaq and Kobe, similar situation, right? So while I'm going to repeat it again, I'm not a favor of the play-in tournament because I think the 7th or 8th seeds should make the playoffs, and I don't think you should resort to allowing teams 9 and 10 who don't have winning records to have a chance to make the playoffs. I think that's bad for the league. Since the thing has been established, right, the whole idea has been established, You can't tell me that LeBron James can't get it done. If he's fully healthy, you're telling me he can't get it done? I don't think so, right? And I'll ask you, right? I mean, LeBron James is one of the top 5 greatest players, in my opinion, all time, right? I have him top 3, but he's definitely top 5, right? So if he's that great and he's healthy, again, that's a big if because he hasn't been healthy right now. And Anthony Davis is coming along. He played much better the other night. If the Lakers really want to win a world championship, LeBron needs to get healthy and just go get the job done. Do what he's done many times in his career, right? Don't complain about the play-in tournament. If you get in that situation, win those games, get in the postseason, because you know what? No team wants to see the Lakers healthy in the first round. Maybe besides the Clippers, who I think really have been wanting this rivalry challenge in the playoffs for years. And especially since they got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George a year ago. The Jazz don't certainly want to see the Lakers in the first round. Because if they were healthy, the Lakers, I would take the Lakers or the Jazz in the first round. The Suns certainly don't want to see them. Do you think Denver wants to see them with no Jamal Murray or Will Barton? I mean, the Lakers just beat them the other night without LeBron James or Dennis Schroeder. So, the whole idea that there's sympathy, there is sympathy to the fact that the play-in tournament should never have been established in my first place. Like, that should never have been. But if you're losing games, you don't have the right to complain now, right? Especially if you're LeBron James, who's that great a player and does unbelievable things in the court every time he's healthy. And you know what? People are just not going to feel sorry for him, unfortunately. They're just not going to feel sorry for him. And the reason why they're not going to feel sorry for him is because he's LeBron James. Right? He's LeBron James. No one's going to feel sorry for LeBron James because he's the best player in the world and one of the greatest players to ever play. Because if he's healthy, he should be in the world championship conversation, right? No one's going to feel sorry for him. And that's the point I'm making to you guys. No one's going to feel sorry for him, unfortunately, because they're like, you're LeBron James, just go get the job done. So while I have sympathy because I think the play-in style format and whatever it is, I never was in favor of it. I don't really like the comments because it comes in the sense that because they're losing games, it looks like a sense of like you don't have confidence your team can get it done. And I know that's not how LeBron thinks, but that's how it looks. And it looks like you're complaining, and no one wants to see a top star complain. Just get the job done, right? That's why people, I think, gravitate toward Tom Brady a lot because he doesn't, and sometimes people don't like him because when he makes complaints, people are like, oh, you're Tom Brady, you shouldn't be complaining. Right? It's why I think a lot of people liked Kobe Bryant a lot and Jordan because they didn't complain, they just went and got the job done, right? And I'm personally a LeBron fan, right? I want to see him win another championship just for a greatness argument, right? I like the way he plays basketball. But his complaints don't look good because he's good enough and he's great enough that he shouldn't have to be bothered by a play-in tournament. They get there, okay, so be it. They're a 7th seed. Look out the rest of the Western Conference, right? They're a 6th seed, okay. Denver, here we come. And that's the point I'm making to you guys. That's the point, right? It's not that I'm against LeBron James in terms of what he believes. No, it's not. That's not it. It's saying that the complaints don't look good, and you're great enough that you shouldn't be worried about the play-in tournament, right? Even though I'm against the play-in tournament, it's what the NBA established. It's what they did, right? You're not going to like everything that's established. You're not going to like every rule that's made, right? But you just got to go get the job done and make the most out of the situation. It's what I told Dallas to do, and look at Dallas, right? Dallas has played much better basketball of late. Right now, they're at the 6th spot, right? They do have the head-to-head over the Lakers, right? They played much better basketball since I made that point up to them, right? When they were in the 7th spot. Dallas, I think, is going to end in that 5th spot, most likely. I think they're going to end in that 5th spot. I think the Lakers, ideally, are going to end in that 6th spot. I think they're going to end in the 6th spot. But who knows? I mean, they might be in that play-in tournament because they haven't looked fully in sync yet. LeBron's not healthy. Again, this is, been probably the issue of the 72-game season, being so condensed and everything like that. But again, people are not going to sit there and feel sorry for LeBron James if they get in the play-in tournament, right? They're like, oh, you're LeBron James. You should just be able to get it done, right? If you're that great, right? Every guy who's critical of LeBron is looking for that excuse, right? So when you complain, you're letting those guys be happy because they want to criticize you. That's the point, right? And LeBron's great enough. I think if he gets in a situation, he's fully healthy, they're in the play-in tournament, no problem. I would say they're a 7th or 8th seed. Look out the rest of the Western Conference, right? In my opinion, it's not that big of a deal. Not that big of a deal, right? So he's making a bigger deal out of something that I think is not that big of a deal, right? And the play-in tournament is not a great idea. I keep repeating the same point because it's important to understand that I am not in favor of this thing that being established. Don't think it should be established for years to come. I get why it was to prioritize winning and to establish a devaluation of tanking, but you're allowing teams that have losing records a chance to make the playoffs. I think is ridiculous. But with that being said, it's the reality of the situation that we're in right now. And if you're an NBA player, and if you're an NBA coach, and if you're an NBA fan, so the thing is, if LeBron's that great, shouldn't have to worry about the play-in tournament, right? Get the job done when you're back, or if you're not there, lead these guys and say, hey, look, here's what we need to do to win these games if I'm not here, right? Do this, this, and this, and get the job done. And he's probably been doing that when he's been injured. But again, get Drummond to be motivated, right? Get Anthony Davis to be motivated. Schroeder getting to play more consistent basketball, right? And when he's back, play to your level of standards. If you're, even if you're 90% healthy, do the best you can, right? Don't complain, just do it. Because the problem is, you're LeBron James. If you're on the court playing, people are going to criticize everything he does because LeBron James is the best player in basketball and one of the more scrutinized athletes too by a lot of people. Because the reason why is because of his greatness and because people expect so much of him. And that's why his complaints don't look good. And that's the important point to recognize here, guys, is that LeBron James is so great, that he should be able to get the job done even if they're in the play-in situation. But he should just be good enough to say, okay, if I'm back, we're not losing, right? If he's not ready to go against the Clippers, okay. Anthony Davis, you're a top 5 player in the game. Lead these guys back by the Clippers, right? You have decent enough talent. Drummond was an all-star. Dennis Schroeder was a 6th Man of the Year candidate, right? Montrezl Harrell's good enough, right? You got Ben McLemore who can shoot it, right? You should be able to get the job done, right? Shouldn't have to worry about the play-in if you're these top-level players, right? That's what I said about Luka Doncic as well, right? Luka's so great, he should just perform enough to get this team out of the play-in situation, right? Same thing with the Trailblazers too, right? It's not like I'm picking on LeBron here, right? It's just LeBron's so great, people are not going to feel sorry for him if they get in the play-in situation, right? Because they're like, you're LeBron James, you're so great, you should be able to get the job done. And to be honest, I think he will. I think he will get the job done. And that's why I'm going to end it on a positive note. He will get the job done. We're going to take a quick commercial break here, but when I come back, we're going to talk about Devin Booker. And as well, later on my show, I'm going to talk about Julius Randle and why he should be the NBA's most improved player. All that coming back up shortly. See you guys soon.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm Michael Shredder, your host of this podcast, and thank you again for tuning into this podcast today. I've greatly enjoyed you guys checking out this episode today. Thank you very much for doing that. Later on in the show, I'm going to talk about Julius Randle, his story, the reason why he should be the NBA most improved player. But before I get into that, we're going to talk about a guy who's definitely improved himself into more of a winner, and that is Devin Booker. He won the Western Conference Player of the Week for the third time this season. That's pretty incredible stuff. That means he's been playing at a consistent level every night and doing what he needs to do to win games. And I like talking about the Phoenix Suns. I've talked about them twice already on my segments I've done for this show. And the reason why I've talked about them is because they have been the NBA's most surprising story. Did I think they were going to be a top 5 team in the West this year? Yes, I did. I thought they were going to be a top 5 team. But the reason why they've been a surprise is because of how well they've been able to buy into each other, how good they've really transformed their defense and offense, and also how good Devin Booker and Chris Paul have worked together. And Devin Booker being Western Conference Player of the Week again shows you exactly that consistent play and buying into winning proved dividends for a guy's development as a superstar. And Devin Booker is getting into that superstar realm as long as he performs to this level in the playoffs, right? Which I think he will, because he's had big moments in his life and he's performed very well in those moments, right? Let's look at college, right? Big moments in the NCAA tournament, he did show up and come up big, right? He's obviously had big games against the Knicks, against the Clippers, against the Jazz, right? They just blew up the Jazz recently. Now, I know the Jazz didn't have Donovan Mitchell, but Phoenix has a tiebreaker over the Jazz at the moment in time. And if I'm looking at the NBA standings right now, as I like to do a lot, the NBA standings have right now, you've got Phoenix is the number 2 team in the West. They're only half a game out, but they have the same record as the Jazz at the end of the day. Phoenix gets the number 1 seed. And what's going to be interesting about that is that basically the fact is Devin Booker has just been consistent, right? So having a second place in the West, right, where you're half a game out, and you already have that head-to-head over the top-seeded Utah Jazz. And the fact is, he was an all-star this year. For the first time in his career, he was an all-star. And the reason why is because a lot of times what all-stars come down to is really a great play on a really good team, too. And the fact is he hasn't made it a couple of years because he hasn't always been consistent, and his team is not really – they've been a lottery team a lot of years, right? Is that always his fault? No, not necessarily. But he's matured. He's gotten his game better. And I know he's averaged more points other years. I understand that. But he's very consistent this year. He's shooting 48% from the floor. He's shooting about a little under 37% from 3. That's more efficient than he's been most of his career. And the thing is, being an all-star and playing in that environment, you get a different level of recognition, right? You get a different level of notoriety. And the thing is, I look at a guy like Devin Booker, and I see the potential of what he can be, which is another Kobe-like player, right? A guy who can really score from the mid-range, a guy who's an excellent shooter, a guy who can get a shot off at any time, has incredible polished skill. I'm not saying he will be Kobe Bryant because Kobe Bryant, there's only one Kobe Bryant, right? I'm saying that he has like a polished game like that, and he can be a player that plays has a similar type of game to that, right? And he can be really dominant in this league because remember, right? Devin Booker's a really young kid, right? Devin Booker has not, has been in the league for a little while, but, he's 24 years old. 24 years old. Right? He entered the league when he was 19. He's 24 years old. So that means he's been in the league, 4 or 5 years? And he's been this good. And the thing is, when you're more efficient as a player, when you're an all-star, that translates into winning. Because if you're an efficient star that is willing to buy into a system that works, buy into a leader like Chris Paul, that is important. And the reason why, him winning these Western Conference Players of the Week, and it is important because it's showing a level of consistency and it's showing that his team is consistently playing good basketball. And that's important, right? Jason Tatum won the Eastern Conference Player of the Week this past week. And the reason why is because he had 60 points in a comeback win against San Antonio, and he's been playing more consistent recently. But Boston, obviously, I've talked about it before, they've been very inconsistent this year. But the point I'm making, though, for you guys is that Devin Booker has been consistent in his production. He's been consistent in the fact that this team has been winning when he's on the court. And he's been consistent in buying into Monty Williams and Chris Paul as the leaders of the team, and also putting himself up there too as a guy that can be trusted down the stretch. I mean, think about it, right? The Knicks have held guys to really tough shooting percentages most of the year. He scored 33 with no effort against them. Everyone knows he can score, but now he's translating into winning, right? He took his success off that 8-0 bubbles run that they had last season. And the thing is, this is what Devin Booker is. Devin Booker is a guy who's elite. He's a guy that now has proven he can win. And the thing is, my apologies on the 3-point shooting percentage, by the way. He's shooting 34.4% from three. And the reason why he's shooting that, and he's shooting 48.7% from the floor, the reason why he's shooting a worse percentage from three is because he takes a lot of contested threes as his shots, right? He doesn't take a lot of catch and shoot. And the thing is, he's shooting a really efficient percentage. He's shooting 86% from the line. He's averaging 4.4 assists. Again, he's playing winning basketball. That's another point I'm going to make. He's playing winning basketball, right? And again, he's a guy that's consistent in terms of being there all the time, right? He's been there for 60 games so far this season, and he's just a very good player. And the thing is, he needs to be recognized as a legit shooting guard in this league, and that's the point I'm making for you guys. He needs to be recognized for his level of talent. I think he always has, but now the fact that he could be a winning player, right? I'm going to look at the fact that he had 32 against Oklahoma City the other day. He had 31 against Utah, 21 against the Clippers, 33 against the Knicks. And in a loss at Brooklyn, he had 36. I mean, when you're asking this guy to perform in big moments, he can do it, right? And the fact is, he is a good coach in Monty Williams, who's been in the playoffs before, who understands how the playoffs work, and he understands how to get a team to that point, right? The next step for Phoenix, obviously, is being a contender. And that's going to all hinge if Devin Booker is more consistent in the postseason like he's been now. Right? If he gives you 25-plus in postseason games and even elevates his level of play more, Phoenix can be a real dangerous team. And he needs to be recognized because you know what? Devin Booker's worked hard, right? He went to a school in Mississippi where he was the man. He was dominant. Then he went to Kentucky, right? He had to take the six-man role on a very talented team. He didn't average 30 points a game at Kentucky. He averaged around 10 points a game. And what that taught him is how to buy into a team system. So for the first couple of years, he struggled because he was exploding offensively, but his team wasn't winning. But the thing is, I think that the experience under Calipari and then also having a leader like a Chris Paul on that team has helped him out, I think, in his development. And the thing is, he has a takeover quality, right? He's a guy that, I just mentioned, right, 32 points, 31 points, 21, 33. Again, OKC is not a very talented team, but they beat Utah by 21 points, and in 29 minutes, he had 31 points, and then against the Clippers, he had 21 points in a big game, right, in a big win for them, right? Clippers have beaten them most of the time this season. And he's actually played really well against the Clippers this year. He had 24 in another game against them, and he's had 26 against the Lakers in big wins, and even look at some of the, we can look at some other big games that they had this year too. Portland, for example, when they won by 32 points against Portland this year in February, he had 34 points. Against Philly, he had 36. And we can look at his other game against Philly when they played recently. He had 19 points, but he made big shot after big shot down the stretch, and that proves to tell you, the thing about him is that, look, they've beaten legit teams, and he might not always start out strong, but he always ends with, good numbers in the sense that he can finish a game correctly, right? And that's so important as Phoenix looks to be, a championship level team. And I'm also, it's impressive because the fact is, look, he's been an elite level scorer most of his career, right? He's been a guy that's been, for his career, is averaging 22.9 points a game. And he had, 2 straight years in 2018-19 and 2019-20 where, he was the number one option and he had the ball all the time, where he averaged 26.6 points a game. And he's averaging a point less than that this year. But think about it. Phoenix is more talented this year, and Phoenix is better this year. So him sacrificing a point actually has helped get them better because he's been very efficient, right? He's been a guy that has lessened his turnovers from, the past 2 years. He was 4.1 in 2018 through 19, 3.8 2019 2019 through 2020. And then this season now, he is averaging 3.2 turnovers a game, which is still not great, but he's averaging 4.4 assists, so he has a positive assist-to-turnover ratio, which he's had much of his career. But it's important to recognize that this guy is now playing on a legitimate team. And the thing is, look, he's scored 70 points in a game before, right? Obviously, this guy can score, but it's now doing it in meaningful games. It's doing it in meaningful moments that actually matter and count for something. And the fact is, what I mean by count for something is that the fact is, the Phoenix Suns are in really, really good position, right, to make a run and to do really good things, right? So that's important to recognize with him, is that he is playing at a level that is winning basketball games, right? And that's important for people to recognize and understand. And it's not just, the fact is, he's earning his. And by the way, I misspoke. He's won his third Western Conference Player of the Week in his career. And the thing is, the reason why that's important is, again, like, he averaged 29.3 points a game during that week, and his team was 4-0. 4-0, right? They're winning games when he's producing, right? Jason Tatum won it for the Eastern Conference, and he averaged 42.7 points a game, but his team was 2-2, right? There's a little more consistency in terms of winning from the Devin Booker side, which is why actually I would probably take Devin Booker over Jason Tatum, right? Because I think Devin Booker I trust a little bit more in big moments. And I think the fact is Jason Tatum's been very good, and he's started to emerge better, but that's a point I'm going to make to you guys, right? And the fact is, in the last 5 games for Devin Booker, he's averaged 30.6 points a game on 53.6% shooting, 37.5% from 3, and 83.9% from the line. And he's added 3 assists and 3.8 rebounds, and Phoenix has went 4-1. And look, Chris Paul's going to be in that MVP conversation because Chris Paul's value to a team is always highly valuable because he gets that team to win and get a winning position to be successful moving forward. But Devin Booker deserves love because he's really elevated his game in big moments, and not just to get his stats up and to look good in the statistics realm, but to win basketball games. That's interesting, and that's an important point to recognize for people out there, right? And think about it, right? He, month of April, from April 13th through 22nd, he wasn't playing great. Shooting 37.5%, percent from the floor, 17.9% from 3, and 86.2% from the line, which is actually very, very good for the line. But then, look at his efficiency, right? 53.6% from the floor, very efficient. 37.5% from 3, very efficient. 83.9% from the foul line. A little down from that other period, but still very, very good. Right, he's a guy that can be trusted there, right? And yes, and so my bad. It's Devin Booker getting his 3rd Conference Player of the Week this season, right? It's this season. My bad. I thought it was all time. It's this season, and that ties in with Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Jason Tatum for the most at this season at least, and that's pretty dang impressive because the thing is, it's not easy to do that, right? Your team's got to do well. You got to put up great numbers. And a lot of guys in this league can put up incredible numbers, right? But he's doing that, and his teams are winning games. That's where I think you become a star or superstar player, is that if it translates to winning, right? You could be a guy who puts up incredible stats. Like, for example, Kyle Kuzma, everyone thought he was like a next star player. Then, on a losing team. But then you put him around winning players, and he isn't as good as he used to be, right? Just because you score a lot on a bad team doesn't necessarily make you a superstar, right? Like Zion Williamson's a superstar because of just like how efficient and how great he's been in the season. But he's a rare case. Just because you're on a bad team and you put up great stats doesn't necessarily make you an upper echelon star, right? I would take a guy like Devin Booker over Karl Anthony Towns any day of the week because at least Devin Booker's winning games now, and Karl Anthony Towns is putting up good numbers, but his team's not winning, right? They're not winning. And that's a key to understand for the people out there, right? And if you want to win games, if you want to be recognized as a star, right? Like I said, win games, right? You want to win games? Do the little things, right? Be the best version of yourself. Buy into a system. And what has Devin Booker done this season? He's bought into the system. And that's why he's won 3 Conference Players of the Week in a season. That's why the last 5 games, he's averaging 30.6 points on 53.6% for the floor, 37.5 from 3, and 83 from the line. And in a week, he's averaging 29 points a game. Right? Right? I mean, let's start thinking about this a little bit, right? He's playing exceptional basketball, and that's resulting in winning, right? I know Chris Paul has a lot to do with it. I've argued Chris Paul's MVP consideration case on this show before. But the point is, what I'm arguing is that people need to start looking at Devin Booker more seriously, right? Not just as an all-star, but nearing that superstar level player. And if he plays like this in the playoffs, Phoenix will be a team to look out for, right? I think they're more dangerous than the Utah Jazz because I think Devin Booker is the wild card. If he plays like this, they're top 6 in both offense and defensive efficiency, which makes them really difficult to deal with. Really difficult to deal with. And the thing is, these awards are obviously great in terms of just building up credentials in Devin Booker's resume, right? But I think the point that I'm making too is that now this can be a way for him to say, you know what, these are great, but I'm going to do this in the playoffs, and I'm going to beat teams in the playoffs and get my recognition through that. Right? Chris Paul's gotten his recognition, not from winning NBA championships, obviously, because he hasn't won any, but from getting teams to the playoffs and getting teams to be relevant in their respective conferences. Right? He did that with New Orleans, the Clippers, the Rockets, the Thunder, and now the Suns. Devin Booker has that same opportunity now to say, oh, wow, this guy can lead teams in the playoffs and get them through series, right? Because the Western Conference is not going to be easy, right? If you're Phoenix, right, you could play Golden State in the first round, right? You could play Portland in the first round. You could play Grizzlies in the first round. You could play the Lakers possibly in the first round, right? If you're an elite level player, which I think he is, you got to perform under those bright lights and elevate your level of play higher than it has been in the regular season. That's what made guys like LeBron so great, Kobe so great, even guys like Kawhi Leonard, Jordan, Bird, Magic. You can even look at guys like Steph, right? They got the job done in the playoffs because they elevated their level of play for that period of time they had to, right? You can even look at guys like Anthony Davis, right? He elevated his level of play last year, and that really helped the Lakers get to that spot they wanted to be in. And that's the point I'm making here, right? Because people are doubting this squad. People don't think this team is that legit because they're like, oh, it's a nice, cute regular season story. Oh, they're doing really well. When they get in the postseason, they're not going to be able to beat any of these good teams. And I get that argument. I get it, right? That makes sense. I understand. But you might be doubting Devin Booker, and people who underestimated the Suns last year in that bubble paid dearly as they almost made the playoffs after being not very good in the regular season. They went 8-0 in the bubble, playing great defense, buying in, and having incredible play from Devin Booker. So people who think Devin Booker can't play in big moments, look at the bubble last year and look at some of the big games he's had this year, right? I think he's going to perform well in the playoffs, and I think he's showing that he has the capabilities of winning and putting stats together, which is incredibly important for trying to get a team to that championship level, right? That's why I think Damian Lillard's very good, right? Unfortunately, with the Trailblazers, though, they don't play great defense. But Damian Lillard has shown that he can elevate his level of play in the playoffs, which is why he's been recognized as one of the best guards in the league. If Devin Booker does that, like he's been doing now, Phoenix is going to be a really tough out because then they're going to have 2 guys they can go to in the clutch with DeAndre Ayton, who's a pretty good third scorer, with guys like Jay Crowder, Dario Saric, and Cameron Payne, and Mikal Bridges, and even you bring in Frank Kaminsky at times too, and Cam Johnson. Again, don't take Phoenix, lightly. If Devin Booker plays like he's playing now and he elevates his level of play in the postseason, Phoenix could be a tough team. That's why Devin Booker deserves his respect. He deserves his respect. And that is important for people to recognize. He deserves his respect as a player, and people need to start recognizing him as that elite level type of player. We're going to take a quick commercial break here, but when I come back, we're going to talk about Julius Randle, his story, and why he should be the NBA's most improved player this season. And I think it's been unanimous, but we're going to break it down further when I come back on from this commercial break. See you guys shortly.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back to GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Michael Schroeder. Thank you again, guys. Really appreciate you guys staying with us on the show to this last segment. This is going to be a really great, exciting segment, and I encourage you guys to check it out. If you missed my last segment, I talked about how people need to start respecting Devin Booker a little bit more as an elite-level player in this game. And he won his third Western Conference Player of the Week this season, so I talked about just what, implications to the playoffs, what that award means, why people need to start respecting his game better, and what I see for him in the future. So if you haven't checked that segment, really encourage you to. Also, I talked about earlier in the show about LeBron complaining about the play-in situation as well. So if you want to hear my thoughts on that, go check that out also. But this segment's going to talk about another theme or topic within the Knicks. And that's Julius Randle, his story, and he has to be the NBA's most improved player. Without a doubt, he has to be. And I'm going to break it down for you guys to tell you exactly why I think he should be. Well, let's look at, just the fact of how he got to this point first, right? So he went to Prestonwood Christian Academy. He's from Dallas, right? And Prestonwood Christian Academy is in Plano, Texas. He had a very good career there, obviously, but senior year, he broke his foot. He was out in the majority of the season, and then he came back in the playoffs and led this team to the state championship. And it was a really cool moment. If you watch any Ball is Life videos when you were younger, he hugged his mom when they won, and it was a really, really surreal, cool moment for him because he was getting double and triple teamed all game. He just came off an injury. He put up like 3 40-point games in a row, and they won the state championship, right? Goes to Kentucky, and Kentucky doesn't have a very good regular season that year, right? They drastically do not meet expectations, right? They grossly underachieve, and people were doubting them, right? They were an 8th seed in the NCAA tournament, which that's not very common by a Calipari-led Kentucky team because of all the talent they usually accumulate, and they were able to get to the NCAA championship game because Julius Randle's great play and through the fact that they bought into each other and had a tough mindset and used all their struggles during the season and their inexperience as a young team, but to get through that because they had the experience of losing these type of games to big teams and they got to that point, right? And then Julius Randle gets drafted, right? Season-ending injury, rookie year. And with the Lakers, he had his moments, but it was around 11 to 16 points for his career there. Gets traded to New Orleans, where he actually averages over 20 points a game, has an unbelievable season there. And then he gets traded to the Knicks, right? So people probably forget, in his New Orleans stretch, he was unreal, really good third option to Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins at points, and he was just a really good scorer at that point in time. But never really was considered an all-star. No one ever really put him in that elite level All-NBA kind of talks. They were like, oh, he's a good piece, good player, right? Never going to be the leader of your franchise, right? And then the Knicks get him, right? The Knicks fans are not very happy about that because the Knicks wanted a guy like Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving in free agency. And, New York's the mecca of basketball, right? They expect to get the highest level targets. But unfortunately, the Knicks have been so bad for so long, and a lot of players just don't want to go play there, unfortunately. There are other reasons too, obviously, but that's generally a big reason. But the thing is, Julius Randle, when he went there, he averaged like 19 points a game and was turning the ball all over the place. The Knicks were terrible. And David Fizdale got fired, and then they put Mike Miller in, and the team played a little bit better, but they were 17-27 under Mike Miller. And they just, they were 21-43 or something like that on the season. They were awful. They just weren't very good. And they get rid of those guys. They bring in Tom Thibodeau. And, you think, okay, they're going to be a different defensive team, but, like, do you really need Julius Randle, right? Do we really need this guy? I mean, he turns the ball over all the time. He spins into double teams and turns the ball over. He's not getting any other guys better. He's not an efficient scorer. And those are legitimate concerns. Like, I understand that. But the thing is, I like talking about human interest stories in my last segment, right? What I mean by that is stories about athletes that can resonate with the public who may not be athletes themselves. And the reason I like doing that is because you want to apply sports to your general life. And the thing is, Julius Randle has shown that perseverance, resiliency, and hard work do pay off, right? And I did a segment, it's episode 513 on this podcast, so if you guys haven't checked that out, check it out. It's called Resilience is Winning. And I talked about the different topics around the word and the theme of resilience. And the reason why I did is because sports is defined by resilience and hard work and perseverance and determination, right? So a lot of times when people look at a guy that's, had, ups and downs in his career, but hasn't quite lived up to his potential, even though I think Julius Randle up to this point this season has had a pretty good career. No one really, people are down on him because they're like, oh, he can't be the leader of the Knicks franchise. They're going to be terrible. Look at them in 2019 and 2020. They didn't even make the bubble. Okay, that's fair. And Julius Randle took all this criticism, right, and everything like that, and he got better from it. So people who follow basketball trainers, may have heard of guys like Tyler Ralph, right? He's an NBA trainer. He trains a lot of guys in the Dallas area. And Julius Randle has been training with the guy for years. But Julius Randle really took an effort in getting his jump shot better and getting his handle better. And he was in the gym 3 times a day. 2 times for like shooting and skill-based workouts, and 1 time for lifting every day in the offseason, basically. And that shows a lot of hard work. You're going 3 times a day. This is what it takes to get to a different level, right? And there will be an ending to this, and I'll explain why Julius Randle deserves to be the most improved player. But I think it's important to get his story and what he did to get here, right? So he did that, right? He started to buy into meditation, where like he wasn't as drained or angry or upset after he missed shots, and he saw a progress in his jump shot over the summer, right? He was playing in pickup games that were filmed, and in Texas and everything like that, right? That NBA guys came and everything like that in a kind of a COVID-safe kind of situation. And he was dominating those runs, right? With guys like Buddy Hield and Tyree Black and, like lower end NBA guys, but still NBA guys, right? Still good players. Julius Randle was like the best player in the gym. It wasn't even close. And people are looking at that and saying, okay, like, Julius Randle has talent, but is he really going to do anything for the Knicks? Well, when you work out 3 times a day, when you meditate, that does naturally make yourself a little bit better. You get calmer, you get a little bit more fresher, peace of mind. It's why so many athletes meditate, right? It's why so many athletes work really hard to get to where they're at. The great athletes in history, like Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Tom Brady, Derek Jeter, you can look at Lionel Messi and Ronaldo from soccer. They all have a level of overcoming adversity, being resilient, and having an incredible work ethic and an intelligence about them to get to the point they want to get to, right? They're driven. Julius Randle has proven to be a driven player. And the thing is, what happened from that is that Julius Randle took off this season. He's averaging right now 24.2 points a game. That's up 5 points from last season. He's shooting a career high 42% from 3. All right, guys, so what did I just talk about, right? He was in the gym, doing 2-day basketball workouts and lifting every day. And what did that translate into? And with the meditation, what did that translate into? He's become now a legitimate, very good 3-point shooter. And he doesn't just do catch and shoot 3-point shooters. It's step backs. It's pulling up from 3. It's pick and pop. It's coming up ball screens and shooting it. Again, they're not easy shots. He's shooting 42% from 3. And it's because of the work he put in with Tyler Ralph and through his due diligence and saying, I want to be a better, more efficient player with Tom Thibodeau. And that's probably what him and Tibbs talked about. And the thing is, what also has improved is the fact that he's had the most assists so far in his career, 6.1. And what do assists do? They get other guys on your team open looks. It means that you're getting guys open shots and they're making them. It means that you're making your teammates better, right? It's the reason why LeBron James is considered one of the greatest players of all time. It's the reason why Luka Doncic is regarded in such a high light. It's the reason why James Harden, when he was healthy, was regarded in such a high light, because they're getting their team better through their passing. Magic Johnson, right? Why was the Showtime Lakers so good? Because he passed ahead and made these incredible passes that got his teammates better. And that's what Julius Randle has been doing. That's what he's been doing. And that's why he deserves an All-NBA slot too, because he's been playing at a really consistent high level this season. And the thing is, what's also important is that he's been efficient, right? 47.8% from two, 42% from three, which are both pretty good. Three is obviously incredible there, but two is a pretty good percentage as well. The Knicks are fourth in the East, and the fact is he's making better decisions when he's getting double teams. He's finding the open guy. The Thibodeau's worked on with the guys about where to be so he can make easy decisions. And the thing is, he's playing better defense. He's rebounding better than he did last season. He's averaging over 10 rebounds a game now. And he's went from a solid player, 18 to 20 point scorer, to a legitimate all-star and an all-NBA type of player. And this doesn't come as a surprise. I mean, everyone is surprised when these things happen, and it shouldn't be a shock. These guys are NBA players. They're going to work on their craft regardless of the circumstances, and they're going to try and get better every year. I talked about Devin Booker in a previous segment, right? The reason why Devin Booker's gotten better in terms of winning is because he's studied film, he's talked to the coaches, he's worked with Chris Paul, and he got his game more prepared for this season. You look at even guys who've improved a lot this year too, and Zion Williamson, right? He lost weight, he got in better conditioning, he worked on his handle more, he has worked with Stan Van Gundy about opening up his game. He's improved, right? Luka Doncic, he's shooting better from three now, right? NBA players don't just sit around and not, work hard and try to be the best player they can be. No, they put the effort in to try to be the best player they can. And the thing is, the Knicks are tied for the 8th best record in basketball at the moment in time. And that's incredible. They were a laughingstock in the NBA for years. For years, right? I've talked about how bad the Knicks were. They had, up until this year, the worst record of any franchise the past 20 years in the NBA association, right? So, what's crazy about that is that he's a guy who overcame a broken foot in high school. He's a guy who overcame injuries in the NBA. He's overcame being a guy, we don't want him on the Knicks. He turns the ball over too much. He can't be the leader of a franchise team. Well, he's proven to you that he can he can lead a team to the playoffs, and he can be really good while doing it. He's definitely proven to be a number one option on a playoff team, and then, maybe a number two on a high-end contending team. But I think this is not a surprise that he's done this. It's not a shock, because he put the work in, and he believed in himself. Confidence, hard work, resiliency, right? These are things that you guys can apply to being good at something in your life too, if you're an athlete or not. And Julius Randle did it. He did it at a high level, right? And he's doing it at a high level this year because of the fact that he's confident in himself. He knows he put the work in. He believes that he's going to be good every night. And if he has an off night, he's like, fine. And the funny thing about him is when he's had off nights, he's rebounded with incredible games. Like if he had an 18-point game on 6 of 19 shooting, he'll come back, shoot over 50%, and have 33 points the next night. And the thing is, the team's winning too, right? They're fourth in the Eastern Conference. No one thought the Knicks were going to be fourth in the Eastern Conference. I didn't think they were going to be fourth in the Eastern Conference, and I'm a diehard Knicks fan. And that's because Julius Randle put the work in. Yes, it's Tom Thibodeau too. Yes, it's a great defense. Yes, it's the supporting cast making up for it. But they have a star player now who put the effort in to be that player. And he's the NBA's most improved player. 100%. If he doesn't win it, there's something wrong there, right? The jumps he's made in his game, the jumps in the way the Knicks have played as a team, now being called a legitimate all-star, and he'll be probably on an all-NBA team this season. And the thing is, he's fought through adversity many times in his career, right? High school, he had an incredible 3 years, but again, that fourth year where he was obviously incredible, had an incredible start to the year, then broke his foot, then had to come back, get himself into shape, and get ready to go out there and win a state championship. In college, right, the team underachieved in the regular season. They didn't exceed the expectations of a Kentucky basketball team with that level of talent. But they got to the national championship anyway because of what he was able to do. And then you also look at the fact in the NBA, right? The Lakers, he had his ups and downs, right? He had a good stint at the Pelicans, but they didn't win. And then when he came to the Knicks the first year, he had good stats, but had too many turnovers and wasn't resulting in any winning. And the Knicks just gave him the ball at the top of the key, and he wasn't prepared. Not necessarily not prepared, but he wasn't put in the right positions, and he wasn't putting himself in the right positions to be successful. But this year he's changed, right? He's bought into what Thibodeau's wanted him to do. He worked on his game immensely to really improve his perimeter skills and get himself to be such an elite level 4, power forward, for people who don't know the term 4, in the NBA. And he's going to be an all-NBA guy. He's going to be the NBA's most improved. And the reason why I want people to understand that he is the NBA's most improved is because of the dramatic jump he's made in his game, the fact the team's winning, the fact that he's become a legitimate all-star, and the fact that he's going to be an all-NBA guy, right? Jaylen Brown has been an all-star level talent guy before, right? The Knicks are playing better than the Boston Celtics at this point in time. Michael Porter Jr. had stretches that he's been up and down all year, right? Julius Randle has been consistent, and he's been actually better in the second half of the year than he was in the first half of the year, right? He's averaging more points now than he did in the first half of the year. He was averaging a little under 23 points a game at the All-Star break. Now he's averaging 24.2 points a game. He's been better in the second half of the season. And that's because he's put the work in. He's done his due diligence. He's watching film. He's being a leader, right? And he's staying confident within himself. And that's all stemming from what he's developed as a player over the summer, through the season, through diligence, through hard work. And that's just the ultimate thing to take away from this thing, guys, is that he didn't have the easiest road, in terms of just he was always a very successful player in high school, but again, he had to overcome injuries, he had to overcome people doubting him. In college, they had to overcome the fact that the media was scrutinizing Kentucky. Are they really that good? Why are these guys underachieving? Not even acknowledging the fact that these guys are freshmen and criticizing 19-year-olds who are just in a new environment, right? But he was able to block that out and get to the national championship game, right? And then when it comes to the NBA, everyone's like, oh, he's a nice player. He's got really good talent, but he dribbles into double teams. His IQ sometimes in situations hasn't been strong, and he's taking bad shots and everything like that. And he's not an efficient 3-point shooter. But then this year he worked on reading the game better, right? He worked on being a more efficient 3-point shooter. He worked on being a better passer. He worked on being a better defender. He worked on being a leader, right? Because Thibodeau needed that from him, and he's done that. And that's the result of a coach believing in you, but also not looking for external validation and being internally validated because of all the work and belief you put in the offseason to get to this point. And that's why I believe in him. That's why I think he could be a big-time all-star for years to come, and he can help the Knicks win a playoff series now, right? That's an important thing to understand, guys. And I look at Julius Randle, and you can't be more than impressed with what he's been able to do this year. And I'm excited just to see what he can do in the playoffs, obviously, right? He's the NBA's most improved player, right? And the thing is, he overcame adversity. I love these type of stories. I love these, human interest type of stories because it's applicable to everyday life, right? And why is this applicable? Because if you work hard at something, if you believe in yourself, if you have the right people around you, and you continuously stay motivated, you can achieve things that you want to achieve if you just have the right formula to do it, which I just said. Hard work, discipline, right support system, motivation. Right? And then when you hit adversity, all right, I'm going to be internally motivated. So I'm going to go work hard and be better the next time, right? That's what Julius Randle has done. And that's why he's going to be the NBA's most improved player this season. And that's why the Knicks right now have been playing incredible basketball this year for them, 4th in the Eastern Conference, and a team I think is going to win a playoff series in the first round. I think they're going to beat the Atlanta Hawks if they play them. I think it would be a 7-game series, but I think they would beat the Atlanta Hawks, right? Because Julius Randle has been that good. The Knicks have a formula to win. And this is just something I think is just crucially important for the development of the New York Knicks as they continue to progress and try to be an NBA NBA playoff contender, right? Right now they're the 4th seed in the East, right? And that's because Julius Randle, he had 28 points against the Grizzlies the other night. He had 31 against the Rockets. He had a 40-point game in Dallas. He had a 40-point game at home against Atlanta, right? He had 30 points against the Bulls. I mean, and look, he's had some bad stretch games. Of course he has, right? Everyone does. But the thing is, he's come back, he's bounced back, he's stayed positive. He's taken the role of being a leader. He's gotten his players better. And it's because of all the hard work he put in to get to this point. He put all this hard work in to be the best player he could be, right? And that's important for people to understand. He put the work in to get to this level. He put the work in to overcome the doubters. He started to become internally motivated and validated by his hard work and his beliefs. He's like, I'm good. I'm going to be able to make this team a playoff team. I believe in myself. I believe in my teammates. I believe in my coach. I believe in the work I put in the offseason. And just, gauge that for your life, right? Like the work that you guys put in, right? Just be internally, validated with the work that you put in, right? Believe in yourself. Have confidence. That's what Julius Randle's story can teach society generally. Thank you so much for tuning into this podcast today. I really appreciate it. The GSMC Podcast Network really appreciates it. Please subscribe to us on the different podcast platforms. Follow us on the different social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Like our content and comment about any kind of things you want us to talk about in the future after you give us a rating. And please give us a 5-star rating if you do give us one. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Michael Schroeder. This is the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And I will see you guys soon.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.